It's sometimes said that fortune favours the brave, and indeed there are many such examples. However, in the series of World War II stories that I've been researching and recording, I have to say that often the opposite is true. A volunteer translator substitutes for a colleague, takes part in a pointless espionage mission, and ultimately gets bombed by his own side. A pilot stays on for some additional sorties in order to support his crew, gets shot down, navigates his plane to a large field, only to find a hidden row of poplar trees that destroy the aircraft and everyone in it. Another pilot who manages to fly his bomber with 2 engines on fire, reaches the safety of the Allied lines, bails out along with all of his crew, only for him to be shot on landing by 2 drunken Russian deserters. And for the subject of this video, a brave act was certainly no guarantee of any favours. This is Franz's story. Franz Kotzur was born on the 26th of June 1926. The records show that the family lived in Klausberg, previously known as Michelschutz. The nearby main town was Hindenburg, named on the 21st of February 1915 after Paul von Hindenburg, in honour of his actions in stopping the Russian offensive at Tannenberg and the Masurian Lakes. He was president of the Weimar Republic from 1925 until Hitler came to power in 1933. The name became combined with the Polish original of Zabrze for a few years until 1922, when the Hindenburg became fully adopted once again. There was then a reallocation of territory, with some settlements becoming part of Poland and others, like Zabrze, as Hindenburg came to be called, coming under the German Third Reich. Of course, the town wasn't the only thing named after Hindenburg. Possibly more people would be familiar with the Zeppelin airship of that name that crashed in flames at Lakehurst, just outside New York, on the 6th of May 1937. Several members of the Kotzur family lived in and around the area, and they mostly worked in coal mining and engineering. Quite a number were listed as invalids, likely something to do with the harsh and dangerous conditions in the coal mines. Franz's parents were Emil Kotzur, born in 1898, and Sophia Sobtix, born on the 10th of June 1899. They were married in Klausberg in 1920 and had 7 children in all, including a daughter, Elfriede Marie, born in 1922, who died aged 18 months. With so many children, Emil qualified for exemption from military duty. In 1938, when Franz was 12 years old, Nazi Party propaganda made much of the construction of sports facilities in Hindenburg, especially a complex of outdoor and indoor swimming pools. During this period, a sure way for young people to succeed was through sports, and it's not too much of a stretch to assume that young Franz might have excelled in this area. It would certainly fit in with the rest of the story. Also in the town was a large sports stadium named after Adolf Hitler. This was used for football and athletic events, as well as Nazi Party parades. It remains until the present day and is home to the local football club. The Nazis can't claim full credit for the pools, however, since some of the construction was from 1929. There was even a sports complex next to the Kotzur house. Franz joined the army in 1939, apparently at the age of 13. It seems to have been a part-time engagement since he was listed as an apprentice coal miner at that time. That also provides further evidence of his strong physical condition, an important factor as we shall see later. He was attached to the headquarters company of the Panzer Grenadier Reserve Battalion 110 in Gleiwitz. At the age of 15, he was with the 2nd Battalion of the 69th Panzer Grenadier Regiment under the 10th Panzer Division. He was first stationed in France, and his unit was then sent to Tunisia. However, it's possible that France didn't travel with them, since on the 16th of December 1942, he received a punishment for disobedience from the court of the 10th Panzer Division. It doesn't seem as if it was a custodial sentence, though. It appears that he stayed in France, and although not yet 17, in March of 1943 joined the 12th Company of the 276th Grenadier Regiment, which was being reformed at Lorient in Finistère, after having been annihilated at Stalingrad. This was much younger than the regular recruitment age, so it's a possibility that Franz might have volunteered to avoid the harsh conditions in the coal mines near his home. On the 6th of June 1943, he was stationed near Conte Beach, Plozeret, Finistère, as part of the German occupation force on coastal watch duty. His unit was called Rudolf, named after its commanding officer, Lieutenant Rudolf. Kotzur was in a group of 6, including an Unteroffizier called Hans Schreiner. They spent their time in a concrete emplacement known as a Tobruk. This comprised an accommodation bunker reached by steps leading down and a couple of machine gun emplacements. These can still be seen at Plozeret to this present day. When Franz's group was not on duty, it was billeted a few kilometres away in a school in Landudeck. The unit was primarily on the alert for any Allied movements by air or sea. Ironically, the D-Day invasion occurred exactly 1 year later on from the events we're about to see, which happened on the 6th of June 1943. 3 local girls, Anna Bosse, Mimi Bourdon and Simon Gegen, were on the beach that day and saw a man being swept out to sea by the strong currents. They ran to the Tobruk and called for help from Unteroffizier Schreiner. He then summoned Grenadier Franz Kotzur and sent him diving into the sea on a rescue mission. After some time battling the strong current by the stone pier, Franz brought the bather back to the beach where he was revived. It's worth pausing for a moment to consider the dynamic here. The girls were apparently not frightened of running to a German gun emplacement. Also, Schreiner didn't hesitate to send Franz Kotzur into a potentially dangerous situation. Had he been drowned, then Schreiner would likely have been severely disciplined. It is therefore quite possible that Franz was not a random choice for the rescue and was known to be fit and a strong swimmer. Possibly the unit had gone bathing together on their days off, and Schreiner had seen this firsthand. And of course, Franz's boyhood swimming exploits and the tough manual work in the coal mine would also have been factors here regarding his fitness for the task. We can therefore also conclude that the relationship between the German soldiers and locals was not antagonistic and may indeed have been cordial. Indeed, the local mayor noted that Franz said that he considered the French as comrades and he was happy to have saved a French life. The rescued man was René Lepape, aged 37 at the time. As well as being a tobacconist, he was the manager of the Landudeck football team and they had just won a match. As we saw, this is the same town where Franz's unit was billeted in the school. Maybe Franz and his friends had even watched the team play from time to time. With a friend, Yvonne Gloagen, René had decided to go for a swim at the Conte Beach. They soon found themselves battling with the strong currents near the stone pier. René was swept out to sea, but Yvonne somehow managed to make it to the beach. René was unconscious when Franz brought him back. Hans Schreiner claimed that he personally provided primary care, using a spoon to open his airway and return him to consciousness. A local doctor was called, who then arranged for him to be transported to a hospital at Toussaint-Bastille, where he stayed the night to recover from his adventure. So what of the aftermath? Was Franz rewarded for his bravery? Well, there is some documentation at the Finistère Prefecture recommending him an award, but no records exist of him ever having received one. This is possibly because if he stayed with Lieutenant Rudolph's 12th Company, they were moved out just 6 days after the rescue. Probably too short a time for the French bureaucratic wheels to turn. There is, however, some correspondence between the prefecture in Quimper and the mayor's office, recognizing his bravery and expressing thanks to the German commandant. These are the original documents in French and German. We also know that Grenadier Franz Kotzur did not stay with this unit for long, as the regiment was sent to Italy in the summer of 1943. It is possible that he was deployed to Denmark and his unit was ultimately wiped out in Ukraine. In April 1944, they were moved to Munster in the Third Reich and were refreshed again up till July 1944. It means that Franz probably joined the Panzer Group Regiment 114 in April, not on the Eastern Front but in Germany. From August 1944, they fought with Army Group Centre on the Narew Front in Poland. We know for certain that on the 15th of October 1944, during fighting around Rozan, he was wounded in the thigh by shrapnel, but he only spent a short time away from his unit. In December of 1944, the division was relocated to Budapest, from where Franz sent a last letter to his mother. They were then held in reserve in Transdanubia. Of prime importance was protecting the sources of fuel for the Reich that were still left in the region. The oil refineries and synthetic fuel plants were being constantly attacked by both the Americans and British at this time, especially since the fall of Italy brought them within the range of the Allied bombers. On Hitler's orders, though, the German army began Operation Spring Awakening. This was a desperate attempt to push the Soviets back to the Danube. The main area of fighting was between two large lakes in Hungary, Balaton and Valenza. After some initial German successes, on the 6th of March, the Russian forces began a new offensive, losing many more troops than the enemy, but eventually pushing them back towards Vienna. On the 21st of March 1945, during one of these actions near to the village of Cheb, where the Soviet forces were advancing parallel with the Danube, Grenadier Franz Kotzur met his end. He was not yet 19 years old. A bunker which he occupied with 3 other soldiers was overrun and destroyed by an Su-76M Soviet tank. The site was Parapusta, and the present-day location can be seen from this aerial image. Franz's body was buried at Barshanosh, about 15 kilometers from where he died, likely because of strong local ties with the Catholic Church, since a number of other German soldiers were buried there. It is also possible to find a mass Soviet grave in Cheb. Following the collapse of the communist regime in the early 90s, it was decided to combine the multiple burial sites in Hungary into larger cemeteries. Along with German and Hungarian dead from 1,400 sites around the country, Franz was reburied at the largest of these, the German-Hungarian Soldiers' Cemetery at Budaörs to the west of Budapest, on the 11th of August 1988. Franz's mother survived the war, although his father Emil did not. He would have been 41 and was sent to an internment camp, either by the Poles or the Russians, along with many local men who had served with the German army, although we know that he had not due to his family status. He escaped, was captured, and died 3 months later. His mother Sophia applied to change the family name to the more Polish Kotzur in 1948. This could well have been to avoid the forced expulsion of Germans from Central and Eastern Europe, which took place that year, although, due to the high number of ethnic Poles in the area, the effects of the deportations were not as devastating as in some other places. It seems to have worked, since we know that she was still alive in 1974, when she applied for a death certificate for France. She died in 1986, having lived in the same house for all this time. So that is Franz's story, a short life with so many twists and turns. But the good news is that he didn't remain unrecognized after all, albeit posthumously. Right by the site of the bunker and Tobruk's in Plizovet, where there is now a restaurant, the local citizens have erected a plaque in his memory, telling the story of the day he saved a Frenchman. At the end of the war, Unteroffizier Schreiner was a POW being held in La Valette in the Côte d'Azur area of France, engaged in mine-clearing duties. He wrote personally to René Lapape, asking for his help in getting him released and returned to his family. Here is the actual letter sent from the camp. The initiative succeeded, and after being returned to Germany, he seemed destined for the United States. However, his plans seem to have changed, and he went instead to South America, where he disappeared. Conte Beach was historically a site for local fishermen, and remained so right up until the 1950s. The winch, used for pulling the boats across the sand and up into the little man-made inlet with the remains of the stone pier, can still be seen. 60 years on, René Lepap, by this time aged 97, together with other locals who witnessed the event, including at least one of the young ladies who raised the alarm, gathered at the restaurant in Plzevet to pay their respects to the brave young German soldier Franz Kotzur.